we call a timeout. Come to the sideline, coach says, all right, throw this. If it's not there, throw it away. Don't waste too much time, and make sure we secure the field goal.
Okay.
So naturally, I didn't listen to that, and and I'm kind of looking down the field, and I'm like, nobody's really open. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw Terence Williams, and I threw it to the back corner of the right end zone because I knew that's where he was going. He went there, he caught it. I got smacked in the face by one of the defenders, and I'm sitting there on the ground, and I could hear coach on the sideline saying, "No, no!" And the crowd went quiet. Teed up, caught the touchdown in the back of the end zone, and the rest was history. I mean, I've never heard a crowd or felt a moment like that. And for sure, that was our Heisman moment.
Smith, touchdown, Alabama! Intercepted by Terence Williams! Polish off the Heisman!
They will not catch Lamar Jackson.
35-40, he's on his way! Desmond Howard is going all the way! That is a Heisman Trophy winner!
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Hello Heisman from the Varsity Podcast Network, where we talk all things college football and, of course, the Heisman race. What's going on, Jimmy?
Hey, Desmond. All right, listen, before we get started today, I want to do a little bit of kind of like inside baseball. This is episode 3 for us, and when we started doing this, you would come on as we were getting ready for these things, and you would always have music playing. And
yes, sir.
What people may or may not know is that you're an audiophile and you love vinyl.
Correct.
And I kind of thought to myself, well, I love music and I got a lot of vinyl. So I kind of feel like I've been called out a little bit. So I actually went up into the attic and opened a box that literally has not been opened in 20 years. And I randomly just went into the box and I'm thinking, okay, Howard, two can play this game. So from now on, every week, I'm bringing an album too, and it's going to be random. So the random choice for week 3 is the Rolling Stones, Exile on Main Street, which was a great one. Yeah. So, but I love the fact that, they always say athletes want to be rock stars and rock stars want to be athletes. And, journalists like me, we just cover them all. So I guess we're stuck in the middle somewhere. But, hey, Halloween this past week brings up another good point. I was wondering, what's your favorite candy? For me, you know what it is? Peanut M&Ms.
Peanut M&Ms. You cannot go wrong with peanut M&Ms. That's a good one. I think I like Twix. I like the Twix bars. Yeah, Twix. It's just, you got the chocolate and you got the little snap to it. So I think I would say a Twix bar. Normally you get 2 in 1 pack too. So.
Oh yeah, well that's critical, right?
Exactly, 100%. Right? Yeah.
So
either that, Jimmy, or a fruity candy like Starburst. I like Starburst, but they get stuck on my teeth when you chew them. But they're so fruity and sweet.
Yeah, I got to go chocolate. I'm all about the chocolate and the nuts, but
yes, sir.
That's what makes the world go round.
There you go.
So, but one thing I can say about Halloween is that one of the things that Halloween has always said to me is that the air gets crisp. I was raised in the Northeast. And when Halloween rolls around, I just remember as a kid, we're out in the backyard, the leaves are on the ground, and we're playing football. It is college football season. And you know what?
Yep.
It took us 9 weeks this time, but we finally seem to have a clear front runner when it comes to the Heisman Trophy. Yep. Sorry to bring this up again. Michigan State running back Kenneth Walker III, 8.6 yards a carry, 5 touchdowns versus Michigan. Big spot for him, Des, and he showed up, didn't he?
Yes, he really did in a huge way. And I tell you what, and this is what you want to do when your name is mentioned in the Heisman conversation. You want to have those types of games against really great competition to start separating yourself from the rest of the pack. So as it stands today, it's Kenneth Walker III versus the field. I mean, he has really separated himself from, C.J. Stroud, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, whoever, Kenny Pickett, whoever. He separated himself from the pack. Amazing performance against one of the top 5 defenses in the country. This is what you want to do if your name is going to be mentioned, because you want to have like, one of those elite performances that everyone's like, man, that's like mind blowing. And after that game, everyone was talking about Kenneth Walker III. Just an amazing game by that young man.
Yeah, people will remember that. Up next for the Spartans, Purdue. Top 10 scoring defense this year, but last week, Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen of Wisconsin each went for over 140 yards against the Boilermakers. All right, wow. You mentioned C.J. Stroud.
Stroud gets the snap from under center, fakes the handoff, rolls to the left, steps up to throw, fires down the middle of the field, and it is in the air and caught by Olave for a touchdown. 38-yard TD pass. Chris Olave catches a strike from C.J. Stroud.
The Ohio State quarterback getting an awful lot of love. Some pretty gaudy numbers, 23 touchdowns, just 3 interceptions. Leads the country in quarterback rating. Did he do enough against Penn State to elevate himself? What do you think?
No, not at all. No, especially when the other guy that's in the conference, in his conference in the Big Ten, against one of the best defenses in the country, had 195 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns. I mean, you look at what CJ did at home against Penn State. I mean, it was a good game. To be honest with you, I've never watched the game, the Ohio State game, and said, man, this kid is the best player on the field. Like, he's a good player. At times he plays great. Don't forget, he's still young, not a lot of experience. But I also like the running back at Ohio State, too. And sometimes I've watched the Buckeyes play, and I've said, oh, that guy, Trevion Henderson, now he's the best player on the field today. So I haven't really gotten that from CJ just yet. So, but, like we said, it's November now. The competition is getting a little tougher, and we'll see if he's able to rise to the top. But the Penn State game, he played well enough to win, but I never looked at him and said, man, this kid is clearly the best player on the field.
Well, some big games coming up for Ohio State. We've talked about it a bunch. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the coming weeks of what's going on in the Big Ten East. And by the way, Trevion Henderson, true freshman, averaging 7.9 yards a carry. That's the best in the country.
Stroud in the pistol with a snap. Hands Henderson running left side to the 20, to the 15, to the 10, to the 5, and he goes to the end zone. And no signal yet. Yep. Now it is for the touchdown. Trevion Henderson on a 21-yard run.
Should we be talking more about this guy?
I think so. I mean, he's averaging, I like to round up. I give him 8 yards a carry. I give him 8. He has like two fewer touchdowns than Kenneth Walker III. But, I mean, he's averaging more yards per carry and with fewer attempts, too. And he's a freshman. And I think if you really study the Buckeyes and you watch them on film and you look at what they've been able to do offensively since losing to Oregon, they really relied heavily on Henderson after that Oregon loss to get that offense going, to jumpstart the offense. And that's when he really started to take over. And they said, hey, man, we got something special in this kid. We need to ride this pony a little bit more and get this offense going. That's exactly what they were able to do. So I think that, Trevion Henderson, the running back at Ohio State, keep an eye on him. And obviously, they're going to go head-to-head. He's going to go head-to-head with Kenneth Walker because Ohio State is going to have to play Michigan State.
Yeah, and a reminder, there has never been a true freshman who has won a Heisman Trophy. And speaking of true freshmen, another week, another freak show for Caleb Williams against Texas Tech, 400 yards. Completed 77% of his passes and threw for 6 touchdowns. Oklahoma, I should say, is off this week.
Right.
The real test is going to come against Baylor in 2 weeks, isn't it?
That is the test. That is. And I tell you what, Jimmy, anytime I'm looking at a Heisman candidate, especially if the candidate is a guy who's on the list early in the season, I just start to look at the schedule. And I say, okay, well, there are probably maybe 2, potentially 3 games where this guy can either win the Heisman or at least start to separate himself from the rest of the pack. And obviously Caleb took over close to the midway point of the season, so I didn't have that opportunity for Caleb. But don't forget, Spencer Rattler was the guy who was supposed to win it. Same school, same position. So when I looked at Spencer Rattler and looked at Oklahoma's schedule and I started to see how Baylor was playing, now it makes even more sense. That Baylor game for Caleb Williams is going to be the game that a lot of voters are going to look at, especially me, because I look at 2 things when I'm talking about Heisman candidates. Not only what did they do, but more importantly, Jimmy, who did they do it against? And if he goes out there on November 13th, and don't forget, that game is going to be in Waco against Baylor on the road, and he has a monster game against a Dave Aranda defense, then yeah, that kid, he will at the very least be in New York when that trophy is given away.
Yeah, and Oklahoma's defense has struggled a little bit, so it could call some attention to Baylor and Baylor's offense. By the way, we're going to talk about this with Robert Griffin III, who's going to join us later on in the pod. But, there's one other guy that I just can't seem to take my eyes off. Sam Hartman.
Snap to Hartman, RPO, pulls it out of the belly of the running back, throws downfield. He's got a man in stride. That is Roberson, and he has made the catch for a Wake Forest touchdown. Right between the hash marks, 38-yard strike.
22 touchdowns, 3 interceptions for Wake Forest, which is undefeated and ranked 10th in the country. Deacons play Carolina this week. Is this the week that the clock strikes midnight for Cinderella? What do you think?
I tell you what, so impressed with Sam Hartman, what he's been able to do at Wake Forest, and to have them undefeated and to just be as consistent as he's been. I don't think, he hasn't had that Heisman moment yet, but, like we said, the games in November, those games are a little tougher. Voters are starting to really pay closer attention to the names that people are talking about. So I think this is an opportunity, a huge opportunity for Sam Hartman to really solidify himself as a guy who is a Heisman finalist, a strong Heisman candidate, and maybe potentially, if he has a game that's big enough, start to separate himself from some of the other quarterbacks, because we do have guys like Matt Corral, we have guys like Kenny Pickett, who didn't have great games, who lost games, and now you're starting to, I guess, separate yourself from guys in your position and then just guys who are on the list. So, I'm curious to see how Sam Hartman plays against North Carolina.
Yeah, Corral was injured last week, and Pickett threw a pair of picks, but both of their teams lost. All right, let's just shift gears here and talk about one of the odder, more interesting stories. And I know you guys covered it a little bit on College Game Day last week. Matt Ariza is a punter and place kicker for San Diego State. Crazy numbers for him.
Yeah.
He is the first player in NCAA history to kick a 50-yard field goal and boot an 80-yard punt in back-to-back weeks. Now, no specialist has, of course, ever won the Heisman. They've never even gotten a vote. Is this the year that we should? I mean, his numbers are absolutely insane. He's a weapon. Is this the year that perhaps we should start at least considering something like that? Is it possible?
I tell you what, if this young man continues doing what he's doing, those exploits on the field, they can't go unrecognized. I mean, that is just mind-boggling. And I tell you what, as a guy who, I returned punts, I returned kicks, a punter like that is a legitimate weapon. When you go in the meeting room on Wednesday or Thursday and you start to talk about special teams, which is a very important part of these games, especially when you have like games in November where the competition is a little tougher and special teams is going to play a role, and you start talking about things like field position, he is a weapon, because you're going to say, okay, how do we offset what he's able to do as a punter? How do we make sure that we don't get this guy in field goal range, because we know he has the leg to boot it from 50 yards? So, when you can garner that type of attention from your opponent, then I think his name should be mentioned. But let's see if he's able to keep this going.
All right. Listen, when you talk about a weapon, just think back a decade. There was a guy who, when he got the ball in his hands, you just never knew what he was going to do. Robert Griffin III, RG3, the only Heisman Trophy winner ever from Baylor, and he'll stop by the Hello Heisman pod next.
Two receivers left, one right. Griffin keeps this one. Oh, and he'll run it in from 10 yards out. RG3 into the end zone for the second time today. And the Bears go up 37-24 on UT.
Oh, man, speaking of what it takes to, as a quarterback, win the Heisman Trophy, we're going to bring in the 2011 Heisman Trophy winner from Baylor University, Robert Griffin III, RG3 himself. What's up, my man? Thanks for joining us.
What's up, Des? Appreciate you having me, man.
Oh, man, I couldn't do this podcast without you, and this is my man, Jimmy Roberts. Jimmy, say hi to RG3.
RG3, pleasure to talk to you. Loved watching you as a player and love listening to you as a broadcaster now.
Oh, thank you, Jimmy, man. It's been a lot of fun Des was there for my first gig there on College Game Day. I didn't even know they had AC underneath the thing. They was feeling real good up there, man.
You know how they roll on College Game Day, right?
I didn't, but now I do. I definitely know how they roll now.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it was good having you on the show. We need to run that back. We need to get you back on the show, brother. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely was. You know, I love being next to you and the guys, and you know, guys I've really looked up to my whole life. And coming into this broadcast deal, it was a really cool experience to be there with you guys and see you work.
A lot of fun to have you on the show.
Yeah. Hey, so listen, Robert, can you believe? I mean, we all say that time flies. It's been a decade. I mean, does it seem like it?
Jimmy, are you trying to make me feel old? I mean, 10 years has gone by really, really fast. Someone told me, you know, a couple months ago that it was the 10-year anniversary of the Heisman for Baylor, and I was mind blown. But you got to have fun, or time will pass you by. So I've enjoyed the process. I still don't think I quite understand the gravity of the situation for winning the Heisman, because it's hard to appreciate those things when you're in the midst of it. And even though it's been 10 years, I still feel like I'm right in the midst of it. So I know my family appreciates it. I know Baylor University appreciates it. And I'm trying to find that not just the appreciation, but kind of understanding how big of a deal it was.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. You never really can wrap your mind around how big it is until you're done playing. And I can attest to that fact. But let's go back to Baylor. Let's talk about your journey to becoming a Heisman Trophy winner. I mean, whoever thought that this kid from, you know, playing in Waco would win a Heisman? So talk about this. Tell us about that season. Like, how did the season begin for you? And then when did you know that you were a legitimate Heisman contender?
Yeah, I mean, it's I didn't even know, you know, when you just introduced me on the podcast, you said Robert Griffin III, RG3, that brought back memories of the Heisman ceremony, because that's exactly how they announced it. And for us, you know, we started that season off playing against TCU on primetime football, I believe on a Friday. And it was a high-scoring game, exciting matchup. Desmond, I caught a pass in that game across the middle. It was, I believe it was 4th and 10. So nobody can ever tell me I can't go over the middle and catch a pass. That's not.
Forget dual threat. You're a triple threat quarterback.
Hey, man, listen. Kendall Wright threw it to me on a double pass, and I'm looking around. I'm like, there's a safety right here. There's a linebacker right here. Why is he throwing me the ball? Throw it to somebody else. I caught that thing, closed my eyes, got hit, and I was like, yep, they can't say nothing to me now. But that season, it was truly special. And we had some ebbs and flows. As you know, Desmond, it's really about how you finish when it comes to the Heisman, because that last impression is what people really think about. So at one point, we were 4-3.
Okay.
But going into that, we had done so well. You know, I think one stat was that we had more touchdown passes than interceptions. Not interception, more touchdown. We should have that, right? Yeah. More touchdown passes than incompletions, and I think it was through three or four games. And we knew at that point, like, wow, this is a real possibility. And then we got to a point where we went through a slump. We lost to Oklahoma State. We lost to Texas A&M. We had a really good game, but a loss to Kansas State. And everybody had kind of taken us off the Heisman board. And then we won 7 straight. And we beat Kansas in Kansas, which nobody watched that game. But we were down. We were down by 17 going into the fourth quarter. No one saw that game. But if we wouldn't have came back and won that game, there is no Heisman at Baylor University. So then we come back and we beat Texas to seal the deal for us. And we beat Oklahoma before that on primetime TV with a touchdown pass to Terence Williams in the corner of the end zone.
Wait. Don't just run through that stoplight. The Oklahoma game, walk us through that, because I think that was like what people would call the Heisman moment for RG3. So walk us through and plus, what were they, like number 5 in the nation at that time? Yeah. So walk us through that one, please.
Yeah, Oklahoma was highly ranked. We came into the game, we were pretty hot, on a win streak. And we actually jumped out ahead of Oklahoma pretty good. I think we had either a 14 or 21 point lead, but as you know, in college, that doesn't mean anything. So they came back. We got a little conservative on offense, and we were driving down the field to try to, really kick a field goal to either tie the game or go ahead and go into overtime. And Oklahoma called a timeout. Wow. After first down. We ran the ball on first down, and I think they called a timeout and came to the sideline. And coach looked me in the face and he said, okay, they want to call timeouts? We're going to go for it. So he said, hey, don't do anything, stupid with the ball. We're in a good situation here. So I threw a pass. Boom, it was like a 15-yard gain. It put us in a good position where we only needed a couple more yards to get the field goal.
Right.
We call a timeout. Come to the sideline. Coach says, all right, throw this. If it's not there, throw it away. Don't waste too much time. And, make sure we secure the field goal.
Okay.
So naturally, I didn't listen to that. And
it's going to be 1st and 10 for the Bears at the OU 34. Griffin steps back in the shotgun. Empty backfield again.
They brought a pressure, or should I say the defensive end to the left side got free on our left tackle. And left tackle did a good job running them around. And I broke the pocket to the left.
15 seconds to go. Griffin steps up, slides to the left side.
And I'm kind of looking down the field, and I'm like, nobody's really open. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw Terence Williams beelining out of his route, because me and him had a really good connection on scramble drill. So he beelined out of his route, and I threw it to the back corner of the right end zone because I knew that's where he was going. He went there, he caught it.
He's throwing for the end zone. Touchdown! Oh, it's gone! Oh, my goodness! Touchdown, Bears! Touchdown, Baylor! Oh, it's caught by Terence Williams! Touchdown, Bears! With 8 seconds to play.
I got smacked in the face by one of the defenders, and I'm sitting there on the ground, and I could hear coach on the sideline saying, "No, no!" And the crowd went quiet. Teed up, caught the touchdown in the back of the end zone, and the rest was history. I mean, I've never heard a crowd or felt a moment like that, and for sure, that was our Heisman moment. And the next week we came back and we beat Texas when no one thought we could. Texas hadn't given up, I think, a play over 30 yards all season, and we bombed them on the first play of the game for like a 40, 50-yard touchdown. So we solidified the Heisman with that game.
It never ceases to amaze me how great athletes can remember in detail so many things about experiences that go by in the flash of an eye. You were a very, very unusual athlete, but you were also an unusual student. You graduated in 3 years, and I'm wondering what your perspective is when you look around and you see, today's current day athletes. Is enough being done for them to prepare them for life after college if they don't go on to play in the NFL?
Ooh, oh boy, that's a deep question now. That's a deep question. I like it though. I would say I did graduate in 3 years from Baylor, and I graduated early from high school so I could go to college in January, which we're seeing a lot of players do nowadays. And my vision for school was I didn't like it. So I'm just being honest. I didn't like school, so I wanted to get done as fast as possible, right? Wow. So if you don't like something and it's something that you need, because I felt like I needed school to prepare me for the field so I could process and analyze things at the quarterback position. But I didn't want to have to go take that class 2, 3, 4 times because I wasn't focused or didn't do my work. And, as Desmond will say, we're very, we're alpha personalities and we want to get things done. So I took that approach from the field to the classroom and made sure I got my work done. But when you talk about the work that's being done for the student athletes, if they don't go pro, I mean, we all can sit here and probably agree that it's nowhere near enough. A lot of guys aren't even understanding that there's such a small percentage of guys that actually make it to the NFL. And that small percentage only play 2 to 3 years on average. So I'm not a dream killer, right? I don't ever want a guy to go to college, play the college game and think to himself, I'm not going to make it. But you do have to have other plans in place. So, maybe getting that degree in general studies probably isn't the best thing for a lot of athletes out there. So you got to make sure you know what your next step is going to be after you're done playing, because the majority of your life is actually going to be spent not on a football field. So I played football for 20 years. I'm praying that I get to, live more than 20 years from now. But if I do, I'm going to spend the majority of my life off the football field doing something besides playing the game. And I don't know if a lot of guys have that in perspective when they first go to college. One of my running backs actually is named Glasgow Martin from when I was in college, did like a YouTube video series on this. about if he knew what he knew now, how he would approach college differently. That doesn't mean you don't, give your all to lift the weights and do all that stuff. It just means you give more of yourself to the classroom, because that's what's going to put you in position to be successful for the rest of your life.
Yeah, well, like they say, hindsight is 20/20. So sounds exactly like what your former teammate was the purpose of his video. I had to check that video out. So going back to Baylor though, now, so now you have the big Heisman moment, your household name. At that point, I would say you're the front runner. But before that all took place, I believe after that one game, you said that Friday night game, didn't you come and do College Game Day? Yeah, which was a very smart move. I remember that.
An audition.
So College Game Day was on the RG3 train before anybody else hitched their caboose to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Look, man,
I remember that.
Look, I was auditioning to be with you, Desmond, way back then. All right. So it was actually funny. We played that Friday game against TCU, and honestly, I think it was a game that everybody, not us, maybe not TCU, they knew we were going to be good that year. But I think it was a game that all the fans were like, "Wow,
yeah,
well, what is going on? Baylor is good, and who's this Robert Griffin III guy?" Because from a national standpoint, I was a freshman All-American. We were climbing the ranks. The year before, we were number one in the Big 12 at some point in the season. But it wasn't really like that, if you know what I mean. So after that game, people were like, "Oh, wow." And they actually, Game Day called up, our SID, Heath Nilsson, and asked him, "Can you get Robert to Game Day?" I think you guys were you in Dallas? I can't remember where you were. Maybe you were in Austin. I can't remember. Yeah. But they called us up and said, "Can you get him there?" And he said, "Yeah." He was in charge of that Heisman campaign, so he knew that would be a big moment. So of course, what did I do? I showed up in some baggy overalls and a bad Baylor polo. I still look at that video. I'm like, what was I wearing? Man, come on. But anyway, we showed up to Game Day. It was fun. You guys were great. Really, I can honestly attribute the beginning stages of that Heisman campaign and the national notoriety started at Game Day. So it was pretty cool. And, it was a moment for me because I watch you guys all the time. I'm like, I'm kind of standing next to these guys now. It's pretty cool,
Yes, sir.
So, Robert, Baylor trending upwards this year in the discussion. Certainly Dave Aranda doing a great job in Waco. Big game coming up in 2 weeks against Oklahoma. Put on your analyst hat just for a minute and tell us what you see when you see Baylor.
Yeah, obviously, I've actually called 2 Baylor games this year. I don't know what ESPN was thinking, but it was fun. Look, we did the homecoming game. We got to run the Baylor line, and it was a cool experience. And honestly, I was very happy that that Baylor, for the alumni, won the game against BYU that we called, because they lost against Oklahoma State. And Des, I don't know if you know, but if they lose twice, but you call them the game, it's all of a sudden it's first or something.
Exactly.
So I'm like, I was happy that happened. But putting the analyst hat on, I mean, you can't speak just enough about the job that Dave Aranda's done. I call him like a Jedi master. He's they called him the professor when he was at LSU, and I know LSU is probably going to try to get him back. Without a doubt, but he has this team playing identical to his identity. You never really see Baylor play this year and say, "Oh my gosh, they're out of control. Oh man, they're not disciplined." He has this thing he calls competitive maturity. So like in those big moments when you have to make a play, they're making those plays. And of course they did lose that game to Oklahoma State in Stillwater, which is a tough place to play. But then they bounced back right away, and they continued to do what they've been doing all year, and that's just find ways to win games. Abram Smith, their starting running back, who used to be a linebacker, and before he was a linebacker, he was a running back, is just a phenomenal story. I have him in the Heisman, running right now, because he just ran for over 100 yards in their last game against Texas. And one of the best players in the country, Desean Watson from Texas, the running back. Right, a lot of people thought, man, this guy's going to win the Heisman. He's that dynamic. They held him to 43 yards rushing. Wow. Now, so when you talk about Baylor, it definitely starts with Dave Aranda. but their defense is playing lights out right now. Offensively, Gary Bohannon has those guys clicking. They run it, and that's the basis of their offense. But when they have to throw it, he's doing a good job throwing it. Now, he didn't play extremely, off the charts this past week against Texas, but earlier in the year, he's been playing really, really well. So when I look at Baylor, I think, man, they got a quarterback that can play. They've got multiple running backs, Abram Smith and Tristan Ebner, who are playing really, really well. And their defense is so solid. Terrell Bernard, Jalen Petrie, JT Woods. They call JT the Heartbreak Kid, Desmond. Number 22. I love that nickname, right? Shawn Michaels, WWE, all that. So when I put my analyst hat on for them, I think they have it all working for them. It's just a matter of finishing down the stretch. Oklahoma, as you talked about that big game, they've been up and down, right? They've been up and down a little bit. But Caleb Williams is the real deal. Let's not make no bones about it. So if Oklahoma makes it through that stretch, I think they have Baylor, Iowa State, and Oklahoma State to finish the year. If they make it through that stretch, they should be in the CFP. The question is, if Baylor beats them and then goes on to win the Big 12 championship with one loss, have they done enough to make the CFP? With my analyst hat on that doesn't say BU on it, yes. Yes, they have, because that means they would have beaten a top-ranked Oklahoma team and finished the year, and then probably beat them again in the Big 12 championship. So I think for them, it's been a wild ride. But don't get it twisted. All the stuff that Baylor has been through over the years, they've never not had a good program, right? They've always had talent. It's just they've had coaches that have come in and whoop, there goes Matt Rule. Now Dave Aranda comes in, bad year, whoop. There goes Dave Aranda. He's come and he's put together consistency. Now he likes it. I talked to him and he's talked to the media consistently about wanting to stay. But I think that's a big cog for them. It's his mindset, and it's being reflected in the way those guys play.
I tell you what, I thought that Baylor would be just lights out on defense, because I've had the pleasure of sitting with Coach Aranda while he was a DC, defensive coordinator at LSU. So I understand his mindset, and you hit the nail on the head when you say they play like his personality, his identity, never out of control, always calm, always in the position to make plays. But what surprised me, RG, was the offense. And I think under Jeff Grimes, the OC that they got, who worked with Aranda at LSU, I was really surprised at their progress, like what they're able to do offensively. Talk to us a little bit about what they're doing offensively with Jerry Bohannon, and why are they so effective?
Hold on 1 second. I got to get little kid. I'll be right back. My daughter's crying right now. I'll be right back.
I love this. So just like they used to say, Des, just like they used to say on Saturday Night Live, talk amongst yourselves, right?
There we go.
Well, Des, I'll tell you what I was thinking about. I'm hearing him talk about what's ahead, and I'll be curious to hear what Robert thinks about Caleb Williams, because in many, many ways, the things that made him so exciting, look at this, we've got a new guest on the show, are the same type of things that made
RG3 exciting.
Right, exactly. In many ways, very, very similar. But let's get back to what we were talking about just a moment ago.
But Jeff Grimes. He's from BYU, right? So when we covered that game, they call him Grimy. And he has this thing that he calls reliable, violent offense, RVO. And when you put on the tape and you watch Jeff Grimes' system, it's very NFL based. So when I talked to him the second time throughout the week, I said, look, the way you put the scheme together, these guys are going to be ready for the NFL, because it's the motions, the shifts, it's the play action pass, it's the checks at the line. And really, the most impressive thing that Jeff Grimes has done, aside from give Baylor University's offense an identity, is what he's done with Gary Bohannon. Yeah. Gary Bohannon's story is a wild one, because he was highly recruited. Alabama offered him scholarships, and he committed to Baylor when Matt Rule was there, because Matt Rule told him specifically, "You will not play." Right? He said, "You will not play for a while." Right. And Gary is a small town kid, and he said, "I like that, because other coaches were just telling me what I wanted to hear. Hey, you're going to come in here, you're going to compete to be this, 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 this." And Gary knew he wasn't quite ready. And if anybody's actually watched Baylor play over the years, when Gary's had his opportunities to play at times, he has never looked like he looks right now, right? They talked about how he can't go through his progressions. He can't throw it. You know, he doesn't run aggressively enough or whatever it may be. But Gary's silenced all of those doubts. And I think Jeff Grimes is a big part of that. You know, he says that Gary is a guy who's very cerebral. He's a guy that works really hard at it. And I can see it. You know, I've known Gary for a long time, and I mentor him as a quarterback. And just to see his development of how he processes, how he gets the ball out, how he's giving his receivers more opportunities, I think it's a testament to him and a testament to Jeff Grimes coming in and giving him structure. Because, you know, Desmond, when you know what you have to do and you know your expectations, oh, man, it's so much easier for you to play the position at a high level. So I think Grimy with that RVO offense, running the ball, and then asking the quarterback to make plays when they have to is exactly what Baylor needed. And that's why Coach Aranda brought him in. He said he needed an identity on offense. And why not go get the guy from BYU who just had Zach Wilson get drafted second in the draft to come in and develop your offense. And Eric Mateos, I said this in the last game, they need to give Jeff Grimes and Eric Mateos, the offensive line coach, a raise in the middle of the season, because they've completely turned around that offensive line. How can you play reliable, violent offense without a physical offensive line? And they are one of the most physical in all of college.
Absolutely. Well, Baylor's offense and the whole team, they have an identity right now, and they have a recipe for success. We're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, RG3 is going to give us some guys who he has his eyes on as Heisman candidates. We'll be right back. Okay, Robert, now I want to hear about some of these guys that you've been watching on Saturday. You've seen a lot of them up close in person because you've called their game. So give me some guys who you got your eyes on as far as legitimate Heisman candidates are concerned.
Yeah, legitimate Heisman candidates. Right now, Kenneth Walker III. You know, there's just something about that 3 at the end of the name. I don't know what it is, but he's been balling. And when you look at what he just did in that Michigan game, I know, I understand, heavy heart today, Des, but he's bona fide playmaker. He carried that team, right? Yeah. Anytime they needed a play to be made, he made the play. That was like a Heisman moment for him. But as we said earlier in the podcast, it's all about how you finish. So he's got a lot of big time games coming up, and we'll see if he can continue that Heisman train rolling. But there's a couple guys that, you know, I don't want to be different just to be different. But I look at the Heisman in a different way. And Sam Hartman, Wake Forest, no one's talking about him. They're undefeated.
We are.
Right?
They're
undefeated. They're number 10 in the nation. And I can only think because it's Wake Forest. Right? You can make the ACC is weak and this and that, but when Clemson is undefeated, they're 1, 2, 3 in the country. So why is Wake Forest not that way? But Sam Hartman's been playing out of his mind. You know, he might not be the tops in all the categories of yards, touchdowns, and all of that. But last week he threw for 400 yards and I believe 4 or 5 touchdowns. So he came on
against Duke.
It was against Duke, but he's coming on strong. And, you know, look, Kenneth Walker probably had some great games against some other schools that might be like Duke too, you know?
He did. He really did. It's true.
But I just look at that and I'm thinking to myself, man, Wake Forest is undefeated. And Sam Hartman, who's the guy that's really led them the whole way, isn't being talked about in the Heisman conversations at all. So I put him on my Heisman list. I have Abram Smith on that list, the running back who was a linebacker at Baylor. He's playing out of his mind right now. And then I have Bryce Young, which is like, you almost feel like it's like a de facto because Alabama's just so dominant. Like, oh, yeah, who's the quarterback at Alabama? Just throw him on the Heisman list. But right. I have another one that, you know, a lot of people are putting on their list, and that's Jordan Davis, the D lineman from
Georgia. Yes, sir.
It's just
about him too.
You look at Georgia and you're like, man, they're like the most dominant team in college football right now, but it's not because of their offense. Nope. You know, we called the Georgia game, myself, Mark Jones, Quint Kessick. And, you know, we almost like started a quarterback controversy because Stetson Bennett went off in that game. I think he had like 5 touchdown passes, and it was crazy.
5 touchdown passes. Now they're kind of passes, like,
right? Say it again.
I think he had 5 touchdown passes in the game you guys did with only 10 total passes.
Exactly. Right. That's a heck of a stat. Half your passes are for touchdowns. Come on, man. That's pretty good.
Right.
So, yeah. But now they're sitting there dealing with the JT Daniels, Stetson Bennett thing because JT's coming back and who are they going to play? You know, Coach Smart talking about continuity. We know Coach speak, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
We know Coach speak. But I felt like you got to have somebody from that defense that's just playing out of their mind because they're so dominant. They're really hard to play against because of their defense, not necessarily their offense. And I feel like Jordan Davis is unblockable. Now, he might not have the sacks or the tackle total to really say, oh, wow, he should win the Heisman. But I just felt like he's just a dominant force, so he should be on that list. The one guy that I don't have on the list that just hasn't played enough games is Caleb Williams, at Oklahoma. He's made some splash plays. We did the Kansas game when Kansas was beating them for the majority of the game. Then they finally woke up, came back, and Kansas said, "No, we're still going to be in this." That was an interesting dynamic. But at the end of the day, Caleb Williams makes the play, taking the ball from the running back on 4th down.
How about that play?
Yeah, it was a crazy play, and of course, Coach Riley said he coached that.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all picked that up, but I was like, really? Oh man, I don't think any coach has ever told me, "Hey Rob, on 4th down, the running back's getting pushed back. Take the ball from him."
And you played at the highest level.
Yeah, we played at the highest level
to do that, right?
Hey, trust me, I was in Baltimore for the last 3 years, and
Right,
Coach
exactly.
Coach Harbaugh goes over everything. We ain't never go over that, okay?
Exactly.
So he's a guy that he's captivating to me and to everybody because he hasn't played that much. So is he a legitimate Heisman candidate having only played 3 games? You can't put him on that list, but I can tell you this, if some of the guys at the top start to, lose or not play as well, and he continues to finish the season strong, you could make the argument with 6 or 7 games that he could be the Heisman Trophy winner. I think he threw 6 touchdowns this past week.
Yeah, that's great.
So he's
against Texas Tech.
Yeah, against Texas Tech. It was against Texas Tech though, right?
You got a lot of qualifying going on here today.
Yeah, but he's one of those guys that just made you like, wow, how was he ever not playing? And it's not a shot at Spencer Rattler because I don't think Spencer Rattler was playing bad. Spencer Rattler just wasn't playing to the expectations, Right.
Yeah.
The crazy thing about Williams is that every time the guy comes out of the gate, he's dazzling. And to a certain degree, he reminds me of you, this dual threat quarterback where it's not only about your numbers passing the ball, but it's your numbers running the ball and how you can affect the game totally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know. I don't like to ever compare guys to myself, but the way he runs is like a silky smooth run. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I had said something about his hair, smelling like Jamaican black castor oil, shea moisture. You know what I'm saying, Desmond? Right?
Exactly. I use.
We're giving away secrets now.
You know what I mean?
I had said something about that, but he's just so smooth when he runs. You would never think when you watch him staying in the pocket that he could run like that. And that's the cool thing about him. He's not just a thrower. He has an unbelievable arm, like a special arm talent guy. But as a runner, he's just so smooth. And he can take it to the house. We've seen it. I mean, he had a 4th down in that game. He ran it for a 50-yard touchdown. You're just like, wow, he just finds ways to make plays. And that is a little bit of a Heisman quality, Deb? Right. So he has a very Heisman quality to him. So I think that'll be cool to see for the rest of the year. And then, he's got to come back. So we're going to be blessed with seeing him play for a long time.
That's true. I tell you what. So some of my friends, they're gonna watch this podcast like, oh, that's why you 51 years old and got all that black hair up there, a hair full of hair.
Listen,
black Jamaican castor oil, huh?
Listen, you got a good head of hair, man. Don't ever let them talk about you, dog. You looking good. I see you.
You let the cat out the bag now. They know the secret.
They know the secret.
I tell you what. Hey, we talked about Caleb Williams and guys. We talked about Baylor, and that OU Baylor game is going to be in Waco too. That's going to be a huge stage for Caleb Williams. Like I said, he got the small sample size so far, but it's like a seesaw. As some of the other guys start to go down, his stock starts to go up. So if he still stays on that path, he may be in New York when it's all said and done. But that November 13th game against Baylor is going to be pivotal as far as seeing him as a Heisman candidate. Going against Dave Aranda and that defense, Dave is going to have some things schemed up for that young Caleb Williams. You know what I'm saying, RG?
Oh, without a doubt. And you saw it this past week, Texas, Worthy, the wide receiver, the freshman. Great player. he went off early in the game, had a big touchdown catch, and then somehow, some way, they found a way to just shut down that offense. So we've seen Caleb Williams come out the gate, red hot, and we've also seen him like against Kansas not, and then turn it around. So it's a matter of it's a chess, not checkers game when it comes to that game against Baylor. Very exciting, very big stage for Waco at that stadium, beautiful stadium. I look forward to seeing how that one shakes out. It's a big time matchup.
You and me both. I was going to ask you about one other quarterback. We haven't talked about him. Ohio State's C.J. Stroud. I don't know if you got a chance to really study him. What do you see with C.J. Stroud? His name has been mentioned. I actually think that the running back Henderson is a guy who's probably even just as important to the Buckeyes offense. But what do you see when you watch C.J. Stroud?
Yeah, we're just talking about Heisman purely with C.J. Stroud and Henderson. I do think that they will eventually get into that talk as the season continues to go on. There's 3 or 4 games left in the rest of the season, and they have, in my opinion, turned the corner massively. Their defense was a big concern earlier in the year, and I wouldn't say that it's no longer a concern, but it's gotten better. And their offense is clicking on all cylinders. And you've kind of seen CJ kind of come into his own. Early in the year, there was a lot of should he be the starter? You know how that goes when you're a new starter at a big time school. And they're saying, hey, should he be the guy? He's a little inconsistent. He's not playing that well. And now he's just consistently putting together 3, 4, 5 touchdown games. They're blowing people out. And, for me, in my rankings, I have him at number 2 because I feel like, I've got Oregon. We got Oregon-Washington this week calling the game in Seattle, Washington. And Oregon did beat Ohio State at Ohio State. And there's a lot of talk about Oregon should be ranked higher than Ohio State. So you know what I did? I didn't put them next to each other. That's what I did. Because if you put them next to each other and it's 4 and 5, how can you justify putting Ohio State over Oregon? I just think that right now Cincinnati has earned the right, in my opinion, to be in the CFP. If they go undefeated, they have earned that right. But they should be number 4. I don't think anyone is saying that Cincinnati, the football team right now, is better than Ohio State, Bama, Michigan State, all these teams. But I don't think that they should be pushed out just because they're a group of 5 school. So when I look at Ohio State and C.J. Stroud and Henderson, I'm excited for them because of the way that they've been playing. And when they get into these bigger games here at the end of the year and they got to go to that Big Ten championship, you're really going to see them shine through. And I do think it's an opportunity for Stroud and or Henderson to have their Heisman moment, because after that Oregon game, it was kind of like a smorgasbord of opponents, that they've had to go through. And, and I think that's what people have been saying. They haven't played the toughest competition, but they're about to start playing the toughest competition. And we're going to see what they're really made of. And I think that's going to be really big for not only their Heisman capabilities, but also for the CFP.
Yeah, there's a lot of offensive weapons on that Ohio State team, and C.J. Stroud undeniably having a great year. But you mentioned it, Robert. This is when the rubber meets the road. We're down to, November, and I guess at least in the Big Ten East, this is going to be a lot of fun to watch, don't you think?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And when you talk about people they remember November, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how well you did early in the year. That's important, great for the stats and the numbers. But if you finish the year weak, you're not going to win the Heisman Trophy. That's what happened for my class. We at Baylor, we finished strong, so we won the Heisman. Desmond, if you remember the show that we did for the Heisman, I picked Matt Corral to win, and Corral, best player in the country first 6-7 weeks of the season. And it's not that he's not playing great anymore. They're losing games that you would think they should win. And that has hurt him a little bit along the way. So how these teams finish this we had Michigan State, Penn State, Ohio State, Iowa, right? I know Iowa just lost again, but all these teams have been in the top 10 at some point this year. And we're going to see who really deserved that ranking and who didn't deserve that ranking. And that's why early in the year, Des, I don't ever really pay attention to the rankings. I don't care. I don't care who's ranked 1, 2, 25. That doesn't matter. You don't know how good those teams are going to be.
Exactly.
They have to play the games. And every Saturday, 100%. Thursday, Friday, whatever day they're playing, they have to prove that. So I think these Big Ten teams are going to start proving who the best teams are.
100%. No, I agree with you. That's why I'm excited. And Coach Corso always says the games in November are the games they remember. And so
that's good. Yeah. Corso's always got something up his sleeve, man. Just something real good, you know?
Exactly.
You know what, Robert, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I just still remember how just electrifying you were to watch. And, this discussion today, I think that one of the takeaways, certainly for me, listening to you two guys talk, is that, early in the season, there was a whole lot of jockeying, not only for teams trying to, elevate their position in the playoffs, but for individual players. And this is really the first week where it feels like there's a true leader. And now it's not about the numbers, I think. It's really about the eye test. When you sit down and you watch college football on a Saturday or a Friday night, and what you see, and how it strikes you, I think this time of year just makes a gigantic impression, especially with these games being so much bigger.
Yeah, you'll see. I think Kenneth Walker might have had a game early in the year where he had about 50 or 60 rushing yards. But Heisman Trophy winners don't get shut down. In November and December, they don't get shut down. Right? They find a way to make the play to help their team win the game. I don't think I can't remember. Maybe it has happened. I'm sure it has. That a Heisman winner has won the Heisman coming off a couple of losses in November or December. I don't really recollect it that way, but maybe it has happened. But these games are the ones that are most important. And what Kenneth Walker did against Michigan, I mean, that was a Heisman moment. Unfortunately for him, it didn't happen 3 weeks from now and be fresh on the voters' mind. But now he has pressure, and Michigan State has pressure. But if they win out, they're in the CFP, and he's a Heisman Trophy winner. And the one thing I also want to say is that Dave Clawson, head coach Wake Forest, right?
Yep.
I didn't go to Wake Forest in case anybody was wondering. But he has two guys, in my opinion, playing at the highest level with Kenneth Walker, who was a transfer from Wake. Yes, and Wake was his only offer. His only Power 5 offer was Wake Forest. He goes there, obviously transfers out, and now he's in Michigan State tearing it up. So Dave Clawson must have a keen eye for recruiting because he's got a lot of guys playing at a high level.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. I'm watching this young man. I'm like, how did they let him get out of Wake?
Lie.
Like, what?
Yeah.
That's mind blowing that they let him get.
I can tell you how. I did Wake Forest this year, or we did Wake Forest this year, and they just said Kenneth Walker was never happy there.
Really,
he just felt like there was more for him, and you can understand that when he's a guy that only got one offer. He went to the place that offered him a scholarship, and he played well there, but he wanted to be the bell cow. He wanted to be the bell cow back, and Michigan State was going to give him that opportunity, so he took off and went. But I still think it's a pretty cool dynamic that you have a guy like Kenneth Walker, you got Sam Hartman. Yeah, and these guys they're balling out right now. College football is a beautiful game, as me and Des and everybody on this call knows. It's one of those things that you just don't know what's going to happen, man. You don't know what's going to happen.
Exactly.
Or Wake Forest,
Yeah, exactly. But good for Kenneth Walker for betting on himself and transferring out, and now it's looking like it's going to pay big dividends for him. So good for Kenneth Walker III. Hey, well, RG3, man, it's been fantastic having you on the Hello Heisman podcast. Thanks for making time for us, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey, man, I appreciate you as always, Desmond. You've been great to me since that College Game Day spin in 2011, baby. You've been smiling with the good hair. Good personality. You're my guy, and I really appreciate you. I don't ever get to, we get to talk every now and then, but just wanted to say I appreciate you and everything you've done for me in my career in college and in the broadcasting booth so far this year. Thank you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Man, RG3 could run, RG3 could pass, and you know what? Yeah. RG3 can talk. That was fascinating, Des. Great conversation with the 2011 Heisman Trophy winner. But before we get out of here this week, we've got some questions from some of our listeners and some of our viewers. Why don't we just jump right in? Daniel wants to know from you, Des, what's it like being at the Heisman presentation with all the winners?
Well, Jamie, I'm excited for this because I love when the fans get to ask us questions. And hey, Daniel, It is the absolute best experience because it's like a reunion of sorts. The only other time we get together as a group is when we shoot those Heisman House commercials. So when I get to the ceremony, man, you get to just break bread with some of the former Heisman Trophy winners. I'm going to tell you a quick story too. Jimmy, the first time I went to the Heisman Trophy ceremony and I saw Tony Dorsett, I was like, man, I was so starstruck because this was my hero growing up. And now I'm like, wow, I'm in the same fraternity as TD33. So it's always a wonderful time, man, to get back with some of the former winners at the Heisman Trophy ceremony.
Now, do you go out and have dinner? Are you there for the whole weekend? What's the deal?
You know, for me, unfortunately, because I'm part of the broadcast, so because I'm working, I don't get a chance to go out there and do the dinners and things of that nature because I'm pretty much still on ESPN's bill. You know what I mean? So it's a work trip for me.
All right, but it's good work if you can get it.
Absolutely.
All right, Grant wants to know, do you keep the actual Heisman Trophy forever? And if so, where do you keep it? And what is the strangest place you've ever taken it to?
Wow. Well, we do get to keep the trophy forever. And they make two, so the school gets one, and obviously the individual gets his. And I tell you, the strangest place I've taken my trophy, this is a great story. So there was like a show and tell day at school, and I have twin boys.
Huh.
So so they asked me to bring it. And so I brought my Heisman Trophy to my son's elementary school. And it was like, but you had like maybe 3 parents that were going to present for show and tell a day. So there's a picture of me with the Heisman Trophy on the table, and I'm talking to the kids, and someone took a picture, and behind me was like a list of the parents who had to speak, and behind me, or after me, was like Mrs. Williamson. And so when someone saw that picture, they're like, "Oh, Mrs. Williamson is going after Mr. Howard. She might as well pack up and go because he brought his Heisman Trophy with him."
So Mrs. Williamson, who works for an insurance agency, brought in some kind of flow chart from work. Hey, kids, look what I've got.
Right.
Oh, this is Mr. Howard. He's got an award for being the best college football player in the country. So how heavy? That thing looks like it's massively heavy, though.
It is heavy. It's not easy to lug around. So that thing is it's solid, and it wasn't easy to take to school. I actually pulled it on my son's wagon.
Love that.
Yes,
Love
sir.
that. All right, this one is from Bennett. It's for the both of us. He wants to know the best, most talented player, I should say, that didn't win the Heisman. Des, you go first.
I would say Clemson's Desean Watson, the quarterback at Clemson. He was a finalist twice, 2015 and 2016. And I just thought that he would win one of those times he was a finalist, but he did not win. So I would say Clemson's quarterback, Desean Watson.
You know, and I think back to 1997. Of course, last week we had your good buddy Charles Woodson on. Yeah. He won the Heisman Trophy that year. What people may or may not remember is that the guy who finished second was a guy who went on to do, a little bit of good work in the NFL. Yeah, Peyton Manning from Tennessee. He finished second in the Heisman voting that year.
Yeah, and both of them actually went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame together, too. Both of them were inducted together this past summer.
How about that? So I guess it worked out for both of them.
I think so. Yeah. And that's it for this episode of Hello Heisman from the Varsity Podcast Network. This show is produced in partnership with Learfield and Blue Duck Media. I'm Desmond Howard.
And I'm Jimmy Roberts.
We'll see you next week.